Welcome to our webinar, everyone. My name's Stephen Dowling and I'll be your host for today. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country in which we deliver this webinar today and pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders, both past, present and future. The agenda for today is the panel and I will share practical, client-informed and evidence-based strategies that will highlight the need to create workplaces that support and promote the benefits of self-care. Now, let's clear up one common misconception from the start. Self-care is not synonymous with self-indulgence or being selfish. Self-care means taking care of yourself so that you can be healthy, you can be well, you can do your job and can help and care for others. And you can do all the things that you need to do and want to accomplish in a day. Being mentally healthy and living well is important to every single one of us. It's about enjoying life and fulfilling our potential. And today's session will cover self-care at work. It will provide an overview of We Care and how to look after your crew. We'll provide a case study, an overview of the benefits that self-care can bring at workforce. Let me introduce today's panel. Michelle Horton is a client manager and practicing psychologist here at Aon and part of our team. Graham Cowan is someone that we work with regularly, and Graham helps leaders and teams to be more caring and resilient and enjoy growing together. Graham is also a board director of Are You OK and helped Gavin Larkin to start up Are You OK in 2009. We've seen with the pandemic, and here's some evidence-based research that arrived from Black Dog. We can see that everyone is really trying their hardest to make sure that COVID has some form of silver lining, but people across organisations, across workplaces, across our community are struggling. We've done what we can to rethink work and restructure our organisations. Many of us have adapted to company-wide remote work and have learned to juggle the challenges of working from home. And some people have even managed to develop valuable new skills. But we have to make sure that each and every person feels comfortable enough to say, this has been an extremely challenging time in my life, and I haven't been coping well. Promoting self-care and help-seeking behaviour is paramount in supporting resilience at work. But self-care shouldn't just be something that we reach for in a crisis. It should be part of our everyday lives, especially at work. For all of us at Aon and the clients that we work with, we have an integrated mental health strategy. It's in line with ISO 45003 principles and aims to simultaneously manage 3 sets of issues all at once. Prevent work-related harm, promote the positives of work, work is good for people, and respond to support people with mental illness, whether it be work or non-work related, as it manifests itself in the workplace. During these challenging times and hybrid workplaces, we've lost the ability to look across the room and see if our colleagues are okay. So it's important employers are equipped with self-care tools to check in and to care for ourselves as we care for others. The pandemic has impacted the nature of work and confronted many workplaces with wave after wave of discontinuous change. And a problem with virtual workplaces is that you never really know how someone's doing. You don't know if someone has been quiet all day, or you can't tell if they've skipped a lunch break. And in this time, our workplace supports look and feel quite different. Each individual is carrying much more of their mental health load themselves. Let me hand over to Michelle, and she'll take us through the best of evidence-based research and the impact that self-care can make on the workplaces where you work.
Thanks so much, Stephen, and welcome to Graham as well. So look, whether self-care is people seeking some planning around their own resilience on an individual level, or is it a team or within an organisation, it's actually quite essential that workplaces, particularly at the moment through the last couple of years with the pandemic, that leaders and managers and HR, safety and wellbeing specialists create a culture in which self-care is accepted and encouraged. In the early days of lockdown, we were bonded over a shared struggle and saw leaders being more transparent about their personal challenges as well. So they started to show some vulnerability, which is really encouraging when we're talking about setting an example and creating a culture where self-care is actually rather accepted. So whether or not that changes as we move into the next phase of the pandemic as well is yet to be seen, but we know that our recent Aon Global Workforce Resilience Report predicts that leaders who don't forefront employees' mental health will see challenging people and business performance issues as well crop up. And I guess when we're talking about the positives of the pandemic, when I like to take that positive strengths-based approach, some of the good things that have come out of the last couple of years is that organisations are starting to really realise the importance of talking about mental health, increasing help-seeking behaviour within their workforce as well. So the tools that some employers tend to give people are phone numbers to call and places to visit as well when they're not feeling too well, but also they need to be encouraging in terms of opening up conversation and having people understand that wellbeing is not static, and we do kind of move on a continuum of wellbeing as individuals. And these can be utilised in your personal life as well as in the work life as well. And what we've decided to do is talk to you a little bit about Dr. Martin Seligman, who is a positive psychologist, and he developed a wonderful model based on wellbeing, and that is the PERMA model. And he's added a plus there recently, so it's the PERMA-Plus model now. And what Dr. Martin Seligman has found is that if we nurture these 5 pillars of wellbeing, there's 5 main pillars of wellbeing, then we're really working towards overall ongoing resilience and well-being in our lives. The tip here really is to make sure that we're not just putting all of our well-being our well-being strategies and nurturing these 5 building blocks just at work or just at home. This needs to be a nice balance between both. For example, if we put all of our well-being strategies and nurtured those only within the workplace and you became unwell and you needed to take time off, for instance, then there's going to be some difficulties in building that resilience and building those wellbeing strategies at home because there just wasn't enough balance there. So workplaces encouraging the utilisation of these strategies across work and home life is really important. So these 5 building blocks encompass positive emotions. So how are we experiencing positive emotions so that we're feeling good about ourselves day to day? The next one is engagement. So what types of activities are we getting involved in that gives us that state of flow? And the third building block is relationships. So nurturing positive relationships so that we're feeling connected and we're combating loneliness, which cropped up in that Black Dog research that Stephen had just mentioned before as well. The fourth building block is meaning. So what are we doing in terms of community involvement that's giving us a sense of meaning? And the last one is accomplishment and achievements as well. Okay, so when we talk about positive emotions, I think it's really important to understand that human beings are hardwired to think negatively. This is an evolutionary trait that was embedded back in the caveman days, and it was there really to stop us getting eaten. The fact that this hardwiring is there means that we need to be really, really conscious about overriding that hardwiring now, even though that we've evolved, and even though these threats that were around back then are no longer around now. So, when we talk about self-care, when we talk about even engaging in these 5 building blocks, we need to understand that as human beings, this engagement needs to be conscious and consistent. So in order to overtake this negative hardwiring, the effort needs to be put in terms of, what do I need to do? What are the types of activities that I can engage in that release positive emotions? And when we talk about positive emotions, we talk about a whole list of positive emotions such as happiness and love. Kindness is an emotion. Excitement, joy, awe, pride, all of these emotions that give us that feeling of positivity. And workplaces can really encourage their employees to experience these emotions through lots of different ways. So things such as celebrating people's birthdays, or celebrating work anniversaries, or celebrating those big wins can initiate those positive emotions. Organising some get-togethers outside of the workplace or during lunch break can also not only initiate these positive emotions, but also moves into that third building block of nurturing positive relationships, which we'll talk about in a second as well. So my challenge to you really is to think about the types of things and types of activities that you can engage in that will give you or help you experience these positive emotions as well. Another technique, which is my 11-year-old calls it cheesy, but I find it really useful, is to take time in your day, every day, to think of at least 3 good things that happened to you today. Again, that negative hardwiring will make us really focus on all the negative things of our day. So if we are conscious and consistent around purposefully thinking about the good things that happened today, then we're going to start overriding that hardwiring, that negative hardwiring, and to think more positively as well. All right, so my challenge again would be to ask you what you can do in your day to initiate positive emotions, and what you can do within the workplace to create an environment that nurtures the release or the experience of these positive emotions from day to day as well. The second building block is engagement, and what Dr. Seligman means by engagement is those activities that put us in a state of flow. That sense of time going by really quickly. Now, each individual's activity of engagement that brings us into a state of flow is really subjective, because we all have different strengths and we all have different interests. For example, I teach a spin class a couple of nights a week, and that's definitely my activity of flow. Time goes by really quickly. I've been doing it for so many years now that although it's still challenging, it's not too challenging where I give up, and it's not too kind of boring that time slows down. So the encouragement here really is to think about what aligns with your strengths, what do you enjoy doing, and what activities put you in a state of flow. And some of those team-based activities can also do that. So workplaces, really encouraged to think about some extracurricular activities that people can engage in. Also allowing employees some time to disconnect and engage in these activities of flow in between, long-running report writings or, I guess work tasks that can be rather draining. It would be great for employees to be given the opportunity to just take half an hour and engage in some sort of activity that gives them this sense of engagement. And for some people, it's things like reading a book or listening to a podcast as well, or doing some extra learning as well. So we want to make sure that these activities are aligned with our strengths. So again, the next question, my next challenge to you is, what activities put you in a state of flow? Okay, the third building block, really important, is really nurturing those positive relationships. And Stephen mentioned some research by the Black Dog that touched on loneliness. There was also quite a large study conducted with results being released at the end of last year, showing that loneliness was significantly impacting mental health within the community. And interestingly enough, the results showed that it was actually teenagers and young adults that had the highest rates of loneliness. And we know that is attributed to increased social media use. The lockdowns as well would have significantly increased senses of loneliness for people, and that inability to really connect and nurture those positive relationships. So it's really, really important that we block out personal and professional time in our calendars throughout our day to nurture those relationships. There's a picture on the slide there of a lady petting her dog, and relationships don't always have to be human to human. And we are talking also about nurturing those wonderful moments with our animals, and any form of relationship really that helps us feel connected. I know that there's lots of workplaces now who are doing things like bring your pet into work day or virtual pet days, because there's a lot of virtual working from home happening now. Also, again, linking into those positive emotion strategies, what are we doing within the workplace to encourage relationships with work colleagues that are not just work-based, that, merge into a non-work relationship where you've got a shared interest and a shared strength as well. And also too, those extracurricular activities at lunchtime can be really useful in nurturing positive relationships between colleagues. Okay, the next one, a sense of meaning. And we know that maintaining balance with work and the community or personal activities is really important, and this gives us a sense of meaning. I think for a lot of people, when we say, okay, what gives you meaning? Automatically we gravitate to that whole idea that work is the only thing that gives us a sense of meaning. But what Dr. Seligman has found is that it's actually those community-based activities or extracurricular activities that give us that sense. We want to reserve kind of the work-based activities for the last pillar, which is accomplishment. So those community-based activities could be a variety of things, could be volunteering, could be joining a work-based soccer game or group fitness exercise class during lunchtime. And you've heard me repeat some of these ideas because really a lot of these ideas and a lot of these strategies flow throughout these 5 pillars. So it's not about saying to you, okay, you have to think of 5 different things to do to nurture these 5 building blocks. All of these things are integrated and they nurture all of them. And so it's really, it's less effortful, I guess, for workplaces to really think about things that they can implement within the workplace, or it's nice to hear that it's probably a little easier than people realise. So those extracurricular activities, maybe even a work-based activity where the team is going out and they're helping the homeless, or they're feeding the homeless during Christmas, or donating presents to children who don't have the means or the ability to be receiving gifts during Christmas time, and and throughout the year as well. Of course, really important to be engaging in those volunteering, altruistic type activities as well. The last building block within the PERMA-Plus model is that sense of accomplishment and achievement. And yes, I mentioned that work will give us that sense of accomplishment and achievement, but really we can't experience this unless we're setting intrinsic goals and really reflecting on past successes as well. So we want to take that real strong strengths-based approach when it comes to setting goals, but also reflection. Scheduling activities and setting goals at the start of each week can be really useful. As a private practicing psychologist as well, this is something that I prescribe to probably nearly all of my patients, especially at the beginning of sessions with them, is, go away, plan your week, write down the times you wake up, the times you eat, the activities that you're going to do throughout the week. I want you to write in your activity schedule 3 sessions of exercise and 3 sessions of an activity that gives you that sense of engagement and flow. A couple of activities that give you a sense of meaning. And what we're doing is we're setting these really nice structured goals, and each time someone or yourself ticks off that goal, you feel this sense of accomplishment and achievement because you've gotten through that day, or you've gotten through those goals for the day as well. So this is really important. This is actually a really strong foundational technique when it comes to managing mental health and self-care as well. And lastly, when we talk about the plus part of the PERMA-Plus model, what he's referring to is optimism, physical activity, nutrition, and sleep. And I think, it's kind of kind of been saturated when we talk about mental health is the physical activity, nutrition and sleep. I think we all really know now the importance of these three things, hence why I suggested scheduling in physical activity in your goal setting activity schedules each week. We know that fueling our body with good food is, our bodies run a bit like a car. You've got the not so good petrol and the really good petrol that makes you run well, and getting into a nice sleep routine is going to help regulate emotions throughout the day. But this fourth one that people might not know too much about, the first one on the list, the optimism, is a personality trait. Some people are just naturally more optimistic than others. So that might mean that some people need to work a little bit harder to be optimistic. But we do know through research that optimism, that strengths-based positive psychology trait, really increases in our well-being and contributes to a sense of resilience and accomplishment and confidence and achievement. So I would challenge some self-reflection here and have gain a little bit of an understanding of how you sit on that spectrum of optimism versus pessimism, and work on experiencing some optimism throughout your day. You can, in team meetings, for instance, one really great strategy, simple strategy, is to start the team meeting off with some good news stories, some wins for the day. And this is, looking at the optimistic part of the workplace. So I'll thank you so much for having me, and I'll now introduce you to Graham, who will talk a little bit about We Care. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Michelle, for really highlighting some very important things we can do for our own self-care and those around us. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from today's presentation, it's that self-care isn't selfish. And Michelle highlighted some real practical things we can do each day that are good for our positive emotions. But it's also worth keeping in mind that there are other things that influence our mood and those around us, and particularly around, crew care and red zone care. And I'll talk a bit more about those soon. But when we think about having better workplaces, more productive workplaces, more optimistic workplaces, we also need to think about how we can make something simple and scalable. I think there's a great 3-word mantra for great workplace initiatives, and it's got to be accessible, practical, and ongoing. So Michelle highlighted the self-care side of things, but we can do all the self-care we like, but if we don't have a good team, if we have a toxic team, it's not going to work. We're going to be dragged down by those around us. And red zone care is looking out for those around us that could be struggling, that might not be themselves. And, certainly the last 2 years have given lots and lots of cases where that's been the situation, where we've had incredible volatility, uncertainty, and complexity. But, if we can have this we care mindset of a team, we champion self-care, crew care, and red zone care. And if we get that right, it promotes growth, it helps increase resilience, and it reduces risk. When we think about self-care, it's really important to think about the moodometer. This is a simple model, and when we look about the green zone, the amber zone, and the red zone, I think we all know that we're better people in the green zone. We're better parents, we're better colleagues, we're better friends in the green zone. But there's also some real tangible benefits to business. Professor Sonia Lieber-Mirsky showed that when we are in a positive mood or in the green zone, we're 31% more productive, 37% more influential, and 300% more creative. And these are essential qualities to thrive in this new world of work. So how did I come to be really interested in the moodometer? Well, it was really going through an incredibly tough time myself. I was a vice president for a management consulting firm called Carney, and went through a bit of a market collapse, and I collapsed. In a very short period of time, I lost my job, my marriage broke down, and I was estranged from my kids. And I actually had to go and live with my parents. And I was out of work for 5 years. And, I tried everything, went to, see a psychologist, tried lots of antidepressants. I even had 20 lots of ECT or shock therapy. And I was 110% convinced that I wouldn't recover. And that's I guess the really sad part about those really deep moods is that you lose perspective and you lose rationality. You could say really that you're insane. And what didn't happen overnight, but I began to really engage in some regular activities. And they're things like starting to walk regularly. And over a period of time, I was walking 45 minutes to 60 minutes each day. I then got into meditation, and I tried meditation when I was really depressed, and it just didn't work for me. But now that my mood had started to improve a bit, I, decided to re-engage, and it's become a regular part of my well-being over, the last 10 years or so. And I guess the final element was reconnecting with family and friends. When I was depressed, I felt ashamed. I didn't feel that I could connect with family and friends because I'd just be a real drag on their mood as well. But I really made a conscious effort to reach out, have coffees with people, and a beer or something like that. And it really did make a difference in terms of my personal well-being. And it was really through that experience that I wrote a number of books, and I'm going to be sharing in a moment some of the things I learned from researching. Over 4,000 people had gone through some really tough times. But I just want to touch a little bit on the moodometer again, and I'll take you to another version of that. So this is another way of thinking of the moodometer and the things that you specifically have to do. And it depends whether you are in the red zone, the amber zone, or the green zone. And these are little things you can do that make a big difference. And there's some slight differences, as you can see there. When we're in the red zone, it's really important that we acknowledge that we're not coping. It's really important that we identify and tell someone that we trust that we're not in good shape. And when we share our story, it also enables others to share their story to make a difference. We need to get expert help. See a GP, call your employee assistance program, see a psychologist, and then confide in someone at work, whether it's a trusted colleague or your manager. And just by sharing that can really reduce the burden that we're experiencing. And a huge one is to exercise. The Mayo Clinic tells us that we have a 30-minute brisk walk. Our mood is better for up to 12 hours later. And as you can see with the amber and the green zone, there are other things, slight nuances in terms of what we do. So when we want to stay in the green zone, it's all the stuff that Michelle talked about: healthy lifestyle, eating well, resting well, nurture positive relationships, and breaking problems into manageable chunks, and putting also first things first. As was mentioned in the introduction by Stephen, I helped Gavin Larkin to start Are You OK back in 2009. And it's just amazing to see how it's grown. It's just such a simple idea that a conversation could change a life. And what's really interesting is when we first were launching it in year one, there were a number of mental health charities that didn't want to be associated with Are You OK? Because we didn't have clinicians as part of the group. And, and the tagline, a conversation could change a life, was something that everyone could relate to. And so simple is good. This image was a wonderful one back in November 2019, where we launched Are You OK 365 on the HMAS Adelaide to 600 sailors going away on a mission for 90 days. We've had an incredibly difficult time. Stephen shared before about the black dog institutes their findings about loneliness and mental health. But this report, which came out by Atlassian in just about 2 months ago, showed that the #1 societal issue that employees care about is mental health. #1, even the last year, it went above cost of living and also above access to healthcare. So when you think about a COVID year, that's quite extraordinary. They also showed some other interesting elements, and one of those was that on average, 54% of people were engaged in this group they'd surveyed. But if their employer were doing things about societal issues that they cared about, aka mental health, cost of living, access to healthcare, climate change, that sense of engagement goes up to 89%. So it's not just a good thing to create the right environment, the right culture in our organization, but if we do it also for the the community in general, then everyone's a winner. The other interesting element which was highlighted in this report was that 69% said they would forego a promotion if they felt it was detrimental to their mental health. So with these elements and also the things that Stephen highlighted before, you can see how this has just become so important to ourselves inside the organization, but also to the community in general. I love this saying, and it's particularly pertinent when we think about the launch of Are You OK? When we first started it, the biggest concern that people had and why they weren't asking in the workplace was that they didn't know how to start the conversation, and they were really worried that someone might say, no, I'm not okay, and not know what to do. So it's been Are You OK's mission to show people how to have a conversation that can really help someone. And I received some real inspiration on this TED Talk with Vikram Patel. And to cut his story short, and I really encourage you to watch it because it's quite enlightening, he was an Indian psychiatrist that was educated in the UK. When he returned to India, he just found it completely under-resourced, both in terms of professionals and hospital service, psychiatric services. And so he wrote a book called Where There Is No Psychiatrist. And he was able to determine very simple practices that everyday people, even illiterate villagers, could follow that would make a difference. And as you hear, if you watch his TED Talk, he found that they got comparable results to first world results where there's a lot more resources and money. And one of the key elements was that in the villages, it was the trusted person in that village that was trained in this. So they were already trusted, already liked, and that made a huge element to have someone they really respected, who was prepared to sort of reach out and give advice. And that really sowed a seed for me when I thought about the book that I wrote. This was my third book, and I surveyed over 4,000 people to find out what worked best for you in your recovery. What was the big difference in your recovery? And when you think about what I mentioned before, to have workplace programs, they do really need to be accessible, practical, and ongoing. And what I found when I surveyed these 4,000 people, I wasn't looking for, a silver bullet or one, fantastic strategy that would solve all things. What I was looking for was themes that came through from those results from that survey. And this is what came up in reviewing those results. But there were really these 5 key elements. And the first is to identify someone who's struggling. And the key element there is just knowing when to approach people. And I think when we think about the loved ones who had in our life or colleagues that struggle at times, when they are going through a tough place, they change. They change in behavior, they change in their mood, they change in the way that they present at work. The next part is showing compassion, showing you care, and asking, are you okay with empathy? And the real element here is asking open-ended questions so that people feel understood. And the more they feel understood, the greatest our capacity to influence and take action. So C is for compassion and influencing them to taking action. The A is for access experts. And, I mentioned experts before. This can be our EAP service. It can be our general practitioner. It can be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. One of the common themes I found in my books was that a huge regret for people was they didn't get a rigorous diagnosis early enough for what they were going through. And the sooner you get that, the better you are to have a plan of action to take action and to think about the various elements that can put us back on the right track. R is for revitalizing work. And as I mentioned previously, I was out of work for 5 years. And when you are out of the work for that period of time, it seriously seems like Mount Everest, climbing Mount Everest to get back there again. And so being connected to our workmates when we're struggling is really good for our recovery. It really helps to get us back on track. Now, there might be some cases where a doctor or a psychologist says they really need to opt out altogether, and we must respect that. But in most situations, people are better off if they're connected to their workmates. It might mean reducing their hours, it might mean reducing their workload, but if possible, if people can be at work, connected to their colleagues, it actually improves recovery. And then the final element is exercise. As we discussed previously, 30 minutes brisk walk improves our mood up to 30 minutes later. And when we're thinking about people that we want to help, asking them to go for a walk is a great thing to do if that's possible in this COVID world, because you're walking, shoulder to shoulder going forward. You're looking forward, you're not looking at each other. And ideally you're outside in a park or in nature. And somehow in that environment, people feel more open to sharing what's going on before them. We've been really delighted to partner with Aon this year with a product which is called We Care. And this is a short program, 20 to 30 minutes, which really encourages people to think about, it is about self-care, but in particular about how we can assist others that are going through tough times. And it doesn't just apply to our work colleagues, it also applies to our loved ones, our family, our friends. And so it's on it can be accessed on your phone, it can be accessed on your laptop or on your tablet. And it's not just about taking you through a course, but it also has some incredibly practical help sheets. So there's a help sheet there about how to find a mental health savvy GP, because believe it or not all GPs are created equal. There are, just like there's good and bad mechanics, there's good and bad GPs when it comes to mental health. And then those that take a deeper interest in you and really seek to understand all of you are best positioned to point you in the right direction. There's also help sheets there about how to prepare for a mental health discussion with your GP, with your psychologist, or with your psychiatrist. And again, preparing and presenting them with the right knowledge about your situation dramatically increases the likelihood that the professional makes the right diagnosis and gives you a plan that will be most effective for you. We also partnered with Aon on a case study with the organisation SPC, which I think most of us can remember and relate to. They're the cannery, can fruit and other and some vegetables, and they're based in Shepparton. And they've been through a number of different acquisitions, and a private equity group most recently acquired them. And really thought, well, we really want to work on the culture. You know, the employees have been through a really, really tough time. How can we work on that? And so they decided through Aon and ourselves to put We Care through the organisation. And as you can see from Pam's comment there, they just acknowledged that it was an incredibly important element to do this course and go through it. And they launched it with a company-wide webinar. And one of the big things was that there was senior leader commitment and involvement in doing this. It was all branded with SPC. They used within the service, they had direct links to their EAP provider, and it was really an integrated approach going forward. And what was the result? It's really gratifying that after people went through it, 87% said they were more confident to help someone in distress, whether it was them or a loved one. But also some people spoke about they used the content for themselves. They found out about how they could go and see their GP or a psychologist and give them a better brief.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Graham, for a wonderful and insightful presentation today. We have a small number of questions that have come in from participants, so I'd like to run those through with you and gain your thoughts on how these people that are struggling to pull things together in their workplaces, how you could help them. So the first question comes from Jenny. Jenny's a CFO in the mining industry. And Jenny asked the panel, as an employer, we tried a few ad hoc resilience sessions in 2020 and 2021. How can we develop a more caring culture in our workplace? And how can we pull these fragmented issues together? Graham, what are your thoughts in respect to Jenny's question?
If we want to build a more caring and resilient culture, it's really important that there is an overall strategy. You know, well-being or resilience or mental health shouldn't be on the side, but it should be really led from the top. And how it's led from the top is what leaders say or do. And when leaders say or do and ask how people are going, that makes a real difference. If they can be authentic about their vulnerability, again, that really, really helps. And if they can have a team environment and culture where they encourage each other about self-care and crew care, that's how we embody it and make it part of our DNA. So yeah, sessions are helpful, but to have real transformation in the organization, it's very, very important that senior leaders walk the talk, and team meetings and individuals encourage each other to take care of themselves and look out for each other.
So true. Thanks, Graham. Michelle, would you like to add anything to Jenny's question in your response?
Yeah, very much agree with Graham in that sense where we mentioned before when we were talking about the self-care strategies, how important it was to show vulnerability and just to set an example about, what demonstrates, I guess, good well-being within the workplace and destigmatization of mental health in the workplace is really important. So, and that really can only really be done with ongoing conversations and really good communication between team members. So,
yeah, absolutely. Look, my take on Jenny's question, and I think Graham put it quite succinctly, there was a lot of energy and effort placed by leaders in bearing their souls, sharing the issues that they were confronted by at the beginning of this pandemic. That was in 2020. We've managed to get through 2021. We're now in 2022. And I think the question mark that hangs over most leaders in most organizations is, will they be able to maintain that momentum? Will there be this level of commitment as people are struggling with pandemic fatigue? And this issue is now heading into 2022 and a challenging time for most organizations. Great question, Jenny, and thank you for that question. We have a second question, and that comes from Amal. Amal is a Chief Operating Officer in a food manufacturer in regional New South Wales. And Amal asks, we have an EAP and Manager Assist program in place. So why do we need to train our people about self-care and mental health? Michelle, what's your take on Amar's question?
Yeah, so I mean, as a previous EAP practitioner as well, you know, and the importance of EAP is there. I mean, we know we want nice high utilization rates with workplaces when it comes to EAP, because then we know that staff are reaching out when they need to reach out. But we also know through research and statistically that people tend to delay reaching out on the early onset of any issues, and they wait till things have gotten quite bad and quite severe. And the issue with that, when we're reaching out to EAP when things have escalated, is that EAP really is only there for short-term solution focused treatment sessions. So, you know, most organisations will offer between 3 and 6 sessions, and so they're needing by that stage a lot more care and a lot more support. So if we're increasing self-care in the workplace and destigmatizing mental health in the workplace, and you know, employees are engaging in these resilience focused or resilience increasing strategies, then we're going to have a higher instance of employees reaching out to EAP in the early stages, where we're going to make, you know, a much bigger difference in their recovery and shorten that recovery time, and that also then obviously overflows into, you know, the health benefits of good work and keeping people at work while they recover because they're getting that help early enough. So,
Gee, that's really practical advice, Michelle. And you know what really came through is don't wait for a person to be in distress. If you see someone that's struggling through no fault of their own, do what's possible to intervene. Graham, would you like to add anything to Michelle's comments?
I think Michelle covered it really well, but you know, just touching it, like there is low usage in EAP. The average is about around 5%, whereas it should be up around 20% if we just think about what people are going through each year. And no matter how many times we tell people it's anonymous, people still have concerns about their privacy.
yeah.
It's a great thing to have there, but it's much better to initiate a discussion way early before it becomes a crisis.
Yeah, and I think exactly to that point, Graham, if people are struggling through no fault of their own, they want to have a private and non-judgmental conversation with someone that they trust. And, you know, that can be a work colleague, a friend, a manager, immediate or extended family member. And yeah, it's really important that people feel comfortable enough to say the difficult issues that they may be confronted, the issues that they face in a non-judgmental and trusting environment. Yeah, really insightful. Thank you. And we have time for one last question, and that comes from Kim. And Kim is a nurse unit manager in aged care in Western Australia. And Kim asked the panel, workplace mental health and is often discussed in our organisation on Are You OK Day and during Mental Health Month. But how can we build momentum over a full year and make it part of our everyday? Graham, your thoughts?
We will always have an Are You OK Day because it provides a point of focus and momentum. But of course, if you go to the Are You OK website, you won't see it about just being the day. And we want organisations to really embrace an Are You OK 365 mindset. And there's some great resources on the Are You OK website about how to build an Are You OK culture. And it involves, you know, selecting Are You OK champions that are able to move around the organisation, assist people in the organisation. And it's also, I guess, putting together, stringing together various issues. So when, you know, diversity comes around Diversity Day and what have you, linking that to Are You OK is also really important. When other days come through about men's health, it's also important to link that to Are You OK and the importance of having good discussions with males. So yeah, when people think about it, there's a lot of ways that you can keep tying it in and keeping it very much front of mind 365 days of the year.
Fantastic. Thanks, Graham. Michelle, your response to Kim's question.
Oh, again, really, absolutely agree with Graham. I mean, it's, and you know, I think that Are You OK have been really quite vocal, especially in the last few years, around the fact that Are You OK Day is not just about one day. Are You OK needs to be asked every day. So some great campaigns on the back of Are You OK days that are specific to each year as well. But, you know, I think also too that momentum really is, you know, part of that encompasses the training, and does the workplace have the skills that they need to confidently look after themselves and confidently look after their staff. And then once you learn those skills, what are they doing and what are you doing to sit together and have that peer-to-peer consultation to make sure that you're still understanding or you're remembering that skill that you've learned and you're implementing that skill within the workplace on a day-to-day basis. So really continuously revisiting those strategies. And, you know, I mentioned before, you know, we are hardwired to think negatively, and I think that the implementing self-care strategies and implementing wellbeing strategies, especially within an organisation as well, takes consistent and conscious effort. So it just needs to be continuously revisited.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Graham. That runs out the questions that we have time for in today's session. But for those of you that would like to ask the panel questions, please forward in the questions just send them directly to me via my email, stephen.dowling@aon.com, and we'll make every effort to return a response to you within 48 hours to provide insight, to provide practical solutions that may be of benefit to you and for those that you care for in your workplace. That brings our session to a close today. And on behalf of Michelle and Graham and all of us here at Aon and Factor C, we extend to you during 2022 the best of health. So to your immediate family, extended family, friends and work colleagues, please, during 2022, stay safe, stay well and stay caring, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.